Summer for 80 BC. Heat hangs over the Aegean like a veil, and dust rises from 1,000 hills long before the riders appear. From Sardis to Hellespont, workshops ring with hammer bronze. Scribes tally rations. Conscripts shoulder wicker shields. An empire is on the move, and rumor gives it wings. Villagers swear they saw roads widen, wells lined with stone, storehouses packed with grain enough to feed a city for years. Others claim the sea itself wears a bridge, that the great king has... In Greece, the news moves along goat tracks and tavern benches. Messengers pass through like falling stars, here and gone, leaving heat and argument in their wake. Some men speak bravely of Marathon as a victory where a charm to wear around the neck. Others stare into their wine and wonder how a quarrelsome map of city-states can answer a single disciplined will. The name Thermopylae already has a ring to it, hot gates, a place that sounds like a story even before the story is told. Herodotus will one day write the drama in a voice that seems to know the ending, and centuries later bright screens will repaint it in iron and blood. But the men alive today do not know the script. They only know the sun, the dust, and the rumor of drums. The legend, like the heat, arrives first. Numbers swell in the telling. Millions, says one listener to another, and the word rolls across the room like thunder. Yet when the talk quiets, the hard questions remain. How many mouths can a river water each day? How far can a wagon go before its axle snaps? What good are 10,000 archers if only a few can stand abreast where cliffs crowd the road? This is where the miracle begins to look like math. Narrow ground, heavy armor, men drilled to move like a single hinge. These are the tools that turn size into trouble. So we set our terms. We will keep the courage in the ash-scented air. We will keep the carved epitaph and the flinty humor. We will set aside the false arithmetic. We will read the oldest storyteller with respect and a pencil. We will put rock, water, and stomachs at the center of the tale, and then see what remains of the shining phrases. Because there is a story worth keeping here. The story of small alliance trying to think clearly inside a storm, of commanders who gamble for hours and find them, of fear shaped into order by habit and oath. Thermopylae is not yet a battlefield. It is an idea, chosen in council and carried north on tired feet. The sun beats down, the cicadas rasp, and somewhere beyond the horizon the imperial caravan rattles forward, slow and unstoppable. Greece braces. The legend sharpens its teeth. We begin not with a trumpet, but with a ledger, distances, depots, coastlines, passes. From them, the shape of what is possible will rise. Only then will we see what courage can make a constraint, and what the greatest empire on earth can, and cannot do inside a corridor of stone and salt. Call this an audit of a legend. We will count carts and crossings, ask which harbors could shelter a fleet, test boasts against what muscle and timber can actually do. We will listen to bravado, and then trace the route of waterskins from spring to camp. If the tail still gleams after that rubbing with sand, so be it. That shine will be earned. If it dulls, we will keep the metal anyway, because steel does not need myth to cut. The fire doesn't start at Thermopylae. It begins on the Anatolian coast, where Greek-speaking cities live under Persian rule. Taxes, satraps, obedience. In 499 BC Miletus, and its neighbors gamble on revolt. Beacons flare, ships are seized, envoys hurry west. Athens, newly confident after reforms, sends triremes. Eretria add a few. The rebels even strike Sardis before the rising is crushed. The idea remains. Mainland Greeks can sting the empire. For Darius, either lesson is political as much as military. Punish the disloyal at home and warn the meddlers abroad. The warning begins nearby as Eretria is taken and sacked. Then the Persian thrust moves toward Marathon, a flat plain where farms meet sea. There, in 490 BC, Athenians run on purpose, closing the distance under arrows and smashing into lighter Persian troops before they can adjust. A dense, shielded phalanx backed by citizens fighting for their own fields breaks the line. Prestige bleeds out of a world power on a morning of dust and sweat. Empires hate precedents. Darius vows to return and make the lesson unmistakable. But empires are organisms with many organs. Egypt stirs. The Scythian frontier mutters, money must be minted and roads kept open. Greece becomes one priority among several, and the machine pauses. Darius dies before the message is delivered. His son inherits the throne and the grudge. Xerxes' eye is no tantrum cartoon. He is a manager scale. If punishment is to be decisive, it must be undeniable. Bridges cross the Hellespont. A canal cuts the neck of Mount Athos. Depots the road. Each feat is both tool and theater. The king commands earth and water. The field force is a polyglot host bound by pay and prestige. The fleet, crucial to feeding and guarding the march, collects skilled crews from the empire's coasts and islands. Across the water, the news lands in Athens like a hammer on a bell. Themistocles argues for wood. Ships, not walls, will save the city. A silver strike at Laurion pays for hulls. Citizens become rowers, learning the cramped choreography of the trireme. Sparta watches omens, even as its hoplites oil leather and bronze. Neither city imagines one duel will settle the matter. They prepare for a season, not a day. So the road to Thermopylae runs through a charred market in Ionia, a sprint across a thorny plain, and the arithmetic of rulers who understand memory. Persia wants to erase an example. Greece wants to make one stick. Between them stand mountains, straits, and the unglamorous questions that decide wars. How many oars before spring? How much grain can a satrapy spare without riots? Who keeps faith when the first plan fails? By the time Xerxes moves in force, the contest is narrowed to its essence. Not courage, which both sides have, but ground and tempo. The clash of civilizations resolves into budgets, shipyards, and mule trains. Thermopylae will be the land cork. Artemisium, the narrow water beside it. The flame that rose in Ionia is now a controlled burn on both maps. Soon the heat will focus where cliff meets marsh and sea, and the empire will learn what happens when size cannot spread its weight. Corinth for 81 BC. The usual noise of Greek politics, petty slights, tax disputes, old wars reheated, goes quiet under a larger shadow. Delegates from rival polis file into a city that is nobody's first choice and everyone's compromise. Sparta arrives with the authority of habit. When hoplites must be arranged and steadied, they lead. Athens arrives with a new kind of confidence. Shipyards full, crews training, and Themistocles a statesman who thinks in coastlines and choke points. Between them, a plan takes shape that is less romance than engineering. What emerges is not a federation, but a ceasefire with a purpose. Oaths are sworn, intelligence is pooled, grudges are corked for later. Some cities stay out, Argos nurses old injuries. Others hedge and watch the horizon. Thebes will send men, but not, perhaps, a full heart. Yet enough sign on to make strategy more than a slogan, and for once the quarrelsome map of Greece agrees to look the same direction. Themistocles argues for geometry. Make Persian numbers useless. That means narrow water and narrow land. At sea, hold the straits off Euboea at Artemisium, where a smaller fleet can fight without being swallowed. On land, plug the coastal road to Thermopylae, where cliff and marsh squeeze the world to a cart's width. The two fronts are one idea. If either collapses too quickly, the other is outflanked. If both hold, Persia must slow, bleed, and feed the problem of its own size. Strategy is clean, calendars and gods are not. Sparta is sacred Carnea and the Olympic truce limit. How many troops can march without offending the divine? Oracles speak in riddles. Delphi tells Athens to trust in wooden walls. Themistocles translates that into hulls rather than palisades and doubles down on the fleet paid for by the Laurion silver strike. Meanwhile, the Peloponnesians hedge with a wall across the isthmus. Unity, but with insurance, a last plug if the northern stand fails. Then comes the work that never makes the epitaph. Muster lists are drawn. Grain is requisitioned. Smiths resize cuirasses. Carpenters patch hulls. Messengers ride with wax tablets that open into marching orders. A forward force goes to Thermopylae, not to win a tidy battle, but to buy what campaigns always lack, time. The Spartans send a king, Leonidas, not as a coronation of glory, but as a guarantee that the position won't be abandoned at the first hard shove. Central Greeks, Phocians, Locrian, and Malian towns, add men and local knowledge of the passes and springs. Friction is everywhere. Which city commands the fleet? Sparta in name to soothe pride, Athens in practice because it has the ships, who guard the Anapaea path above the pass. The Phocians, because it is their backyard, and because frontline honor at the wall is already spoken for. Who decides when to withdraw? No one writes it down. Everyone will argue later. Even the diet is contested. Barley or wheat, dried figs, or salted fish, because rations become strategy when a day's delay is the goal. In taverns, the story already simplifies. Sparta the shield, Athens the oar, Greece the fist. In council rooms, the math stays complicated. Rowers must be paid daily. Hoplites bring their own armor but still need rations. Allied cities with shallow treasuries ask for loans. A convoy vanishes in squall. A hull splits a seam on a hidden reef. And still the apparatus lurches into motion. The fleet noses toward Artemisium. Columns of bronze and leather tramp north toward the hot gates, where sulfur steam curls from the springs and the road narrows to a promise. When the first Persian scouts feel the sea breeze off the Malian Gulf and see shields glittering where the highway should be empty, it is proof that the plan has moved from talk to terrain. Thermopylae is chosen not because it is glamorous, but because it is efficient, a place where discipline can be multiplied and numbers divided. Behind those shields lie all the unromantic decisions that make alliances real. Who yields prestige to whom? Which festival is bent without breaking? How much fear is admitted, and how much is harnessed? From such timber a stand is built. Herodotus is our open door and our funhouse mirror. He isn't a general's logbook. He's a collector of voices. Sailors' brag, farmers' rumor, ambassadors' pride, stitched into a tale that moves like a caravan. He gives speeches too polished to be raw, and numbers that swell the farther they march in the granaries that must feed them. Throw him out and we accept silence. Swallow him whole and we accept illusion. He names immortals, counts triremes, sketches costumes, and shows how an empire swears oaths. Then his arithmetic creaks, hosts of myriads, fleets like forests. If those totals were literal, roads would grind to powder, and pasture would be eaten to mud. Grain barges have limits. When he stacks soldiers by the 100,000, we stack amphorae, fodder bales, and watering points, and watch the columns shrink to what rivers and depots can carry. Yet he preserves textures no later digest can fake. The Salian horsemen selling their reins when odds tilt. The anxious air at Delphi where envoys beg a god for strategy and get riddles. The note that Phocians did guard a mountain track, startled less by cowardice than by dust, noise, and arrows. These grains of sand hook the story to human nerves, even when the dune is mismeasured. Archaeology and topography trim exaggeration without dulling the blade. The old shoreline proves the past was tighter than today's maps. Cliff and swamp really did squeeze the road. Springs still steam at the hot gates. A knoll behind the narrows has yielded arrowheads, an earthy echo of the final stand. Put text back on ground and puzzles resolve. Why light infantry fail head-on? Why elites could not deploy? Why rotation at the wall matter more than bravado? Bias breeds in every paragraph. Herodotus admires cleverness and civic courage. He distrusts autocrats. He writes for an audience that want examples. So men become morals. Xerxes becomes a parable of the blindness of scale. Leonidas, duty with a beard. The speeches, polished by memory, tell us less what was said than what Greeks believed ought to have been said. So our method is not to sneer, but to weigh. Where he gives numbers, we ask the mule. Where he offers a speech, we test whether the decision stands without the rhetoric. Where a miracle glitters, we look for the lever, terrain, timing, supply. Where he leaves blanks, we sit with him rather than caulk with wishful thinking. War makes noise. History must be quiet enough to hear what the noise hides. What remains after sanding? A Persian army large enough to frighten and dependent on moving depots. A Greek alliance fragile but functional. A pass whose geometry equalizes. A goat track a frightened local could betray. And a sea fight tied to the land fight, so tightly the tail must braid them. The myth thins at the edges, but the center holds. Men sweat in bronze behind a wall, encouraged by his hours at a brutal rate, will keep Herodotus as a guide. Sometimes flaring, sometimes sputtering, but better than darkness. Our job is to walk beside him and let the earth talk back. If the legend survives, it will be because the ground agrees, not because we love the legend first. Dawn breathes sulfur at the hot gates. Steam curls from the springs, and the low wall the Greeks rebuilt crouches like a second shield before the first. Leonidas stations his men in layered files where cliff and marsh pinch the road to a mouth no wider than a cart. Bronze glints. Shields overlap. Spearheads pattern the air. Across the flats, Persian skirmishers drift forward, loosing test shots, then peel away to make room. Trumpets answer trumpets. Xerxes watches from a chair on the slope, expecting a shove to topple a fence. The first shove is archery. The sky thickens with reeds and iron. Hoplites kneel, lift, and lean. Bronze domes tilt. The thrum fades against wood and leather. A foreign boasts that the arrows will blot out the sun. A Spartan, without looking up, growls a line that will outlive him. Good. Then we will fight in the shade. The jest isn't bravado so much as calibration. Men need a sentence to hold as the noise climbs. Light infantry follow. Wicker shields high. Short spears jostling. The corridor turns mass into clatter. When the front rank meets the wall of bronze, momentum goes sideways. The Greek line absorbs, give a half step, then snaps forward on command. It's ugly, rhythmic work. Thrust underhand into the gap between shield and throat, rip free, shield but the teeth, half step back to dress the line. When arms shake, file leaders bark and the tired slide out through lanes while fresh men shoulder in. Rotation, drilled in quiet seasons, does its silent arithmetic. The past remains shut. Then the immortals, Persia's named elite, move in bright lamellar and quiet arrogance. They are brave and numerous. They are also constrained. The frontage denies them their flourish. Their arrows find only the rims of shields. Their short spears skitter against ash wood and bronze. The Spartans bait them with deliberate sway. Yield a pace, invite the rush, collide as one, and the immortals learn that a phalanx is a door that opens only inward, bodies stack in the narrows. Heralds scuttle, orders change, the press resumes. Nothing gives. Heat gnaws at both sides. The Greeks manage water in sips. Helots and attendants we behind the files with skins and words. Dead must be dragged clear of the footing, or the footing will drag the living down. Leonidas keeps the allied contingents rotating. Locrians and Phocians have their hours on the wall. Thespians take the front and refuse later to leave it. The Thebans, place where they will be seen, hold when watched, doubt creasing their brows. Names mix with dust. The wall is an appetite that eats strength and order. Far offshore, the sea fight at Artemisium stutters and circles. Squalls fracture neat lines. Ramming runs end in splintered oars. The news that filters through the camps by evening is not triumphant but sufficient. The fleet is unbroken, which means the army is supplied, which means the stand continues to mean something. Strategy remains a braid, not a pair of frayed cords. By late day, Xerxes has spent anger and prestige in equal measure. He sends messengers with promises of land and titles. Leonidas answers with the economy of a man counting breaths. More attacks come at dusk to catch the Greeks in fatigue. The passes flicker with torchlight and screams. Then the noise fades to the scrape of shovels. Night belongs to the buried, and the armorers filing edges by firelight. The pass still holds. What the day proves is simple and devastating to confidence. In a corridor, courage needs geometry more than speeches. Xerxes has numbers, but cannot lay them side by side. He has archers, but cannot angle them around shields. He has elites, but cannot let them bloom. Leonidas is fewer of everything except habits. The habit to dress the line, to rotate on account, to step into the stumble. Day one ends with truth no boast can cover. The empire can be made to cue. Legend prefer tidy math. 300 against 1,000,000 fits on a shield rim. Travels well in taverns and flatters whoever repeats it. Reality is more crowded, and, to me, more impressive. Leonidas does not walk into the pass with a tiny honor guard. He brings 300 Spartans, yes, but also perioikoi and helots who carry, cook, and haul the fallen. He joins allied contingents from Tegia, Corinth, Mantinea, Arcadian towns, Thespie, Thebes, Phocis, Locris, and Malice, men who know the springs and goat tracks, and which wind kicks up arrows in the afternoon. The true first-day Greek total sits around 7,000, a composite machine whose parts don't sing the same hymn but keep the same time. Across the flat, arithmetic has a diet. Herodotus' myriads swell into forests of spears when copied uncritically. A quartermaster's pencil pares them down. Bridges, roads, pasture, wells, and the daily tonnage of barley put a ceiling on grandeur. A field force in the Thermopylae Artemisium theater measured in the low tens to perhaps a couple 100,000 souls, including sailors, rowers, engineers, and the necessary swarm of support, is plausible. Millions is not. That is no demotion. Marching, feeding, and paying such a host across mountains and straits is achievement enough to humble any map. Why then does a smaller number feel like theft, as if the legend were being robbed? Because the cartoon made the stand simple, and we mistake simplicity for honor. The truth, once you sit with it, sharpens rather than dulls the edge. A 7,000-man composite force holding off a far larger, professionally led empire in a rationally chosen corridor is harder, not easier, than a fairy tale of enchanted Spartans. It demands logistics, discipline, and humility among jealous allies. Accept rotation, share water, obey signals from a king you did not elect. It demands that Attic sailors and Peloponnesian farmers believe the same arithmetic about ground and time. Even the 300 are complicated. Each Spartan hoplite is a point of a spear strapped to a small society. Household, attendance, training system, a lifetime of meals eaten under rules stricter than most temples. The famous red cloak is practical psychology, high blood, project inevitability. Their reputation anchors allies who don't share their customs but do share their danger. Around them stand contingents with fewer songs written about them, but with equal blisters and broken knuckles. On day 3, when the rearward path is compromised and some contingents depart on order, the 300 headline grows louder in memory. But the last stand is close to 2,000. Spartans, Thespians, Thebans held or compelled, men drawn by oath, pride, necessity, and the cold math of buying hours. Numbers drop as the circle tightens, until the epitaph can speak in the singular again. Memory likes its subject stark. History keeps their neighbors in the frame. So we recalibrate. We trade a grandiose poster for a workable map. Thousands here, many tens of thousands there. Not a miracle of physics, but a mastery of geometry. The proportions, still awe. Against that weight of empire, the past becomes a machine built of cliff, marsh, spear, and oath. The measure of courage does not shrink with the arithmetic. If anything, it grows, because courage without enchantment is the kind a man can choose, and therefore the kind that binds. Night settles over the ridge above the hot gates. Along the Anapaea path, steep, narrow, known to goat hunters, Phocians keep watch, shields grounded. A Trachinian named Ephialtes leads a Persian detachment up through resin-scented pines. Whether for pay or favor, he points them toward the Greek's back. The first sound is wind and pebbles, then armor-knocking stone. Phocians loose arrows, wicker shields rattle. The column keeps climbing. A few fall. The rest are pushed to a spur and bypassed. The upper jaw closes. At dawn a runner reaches Leonidas with the worst news. They are in our rear. The king calls council in the steam of the springs. Options are counted, not announced. Withdraw now and save some. Linger and lose all. Stand and by hours no one else can. Oath, prophecy, pride, and arithmetic speak. The choice is not beautiful, only necessary. Messengers go. Some contingents are released. Carry the news south, live to fight at the Isthmus wall. Others ask to stay and are told the truth. Staying means dying by inches. The Thespians refuse to leave. The Thebans remain under the cloud Herodotus never clears. Whatever their stance, their bodies will share the ground. The Spartans do not debate. Their deaths certify their calculation, not collapse, govern the retreat. Xerxes presses from the front, newly certain that time will achieve what arrows could not. From the ridge, the flanking column pours down toward the Greek rear. Leonidas orders a sally to blunt the descent and haul back the fallen before the press tramples them. Tradition says he dies there, and the ring that closes over his body buys another hour and rumor enough to steady counsels. The line contracts toward the last knoll behind the narrows. Spears shatter. Men stab with the stumps. Short swords come out. Shields tilt inward to make a shell, then burst in lunges to shove the enemy off the footing. Rotation is done. Only refusal remains. Cliff, marsh, glittering gulf, indifferent. Heralds bring promises, lands, titles, safe towns. From the Greek circle come answers too short to write. The men who remain trade in minutes now. The coin that buys everything behind them. A fleet's repositioning at Salamis. A wall's completion at the isthmus. Councils that need one more night. When the upper column fully debouches, archers crowd for a clear shot and darken the slope. The last Greeks close shoulder to shoulder on the hill. They do not pretend victory. They insist on terms. A stand is a bargain at knife point. We give our lives. You give us time. Xerxes accepts because he must. Arrows finish what spears and prestige could not, while the front presses in with blades for trophies. By midday the pass is open. The road south is clear. The message is clearer. Greece did not flee. It calculated. And when the numbers turned cruel, it paid the bill in full. By afternoon, the knoll is quiet. Persian officers pace the pass that cost them a day and a crown's worth of confidence. The road south opens, and with it the next act. Athens empties before Xerxes arrives. Temples blacken. The Acropolis burns. The smoke marks a pivot from rock to water, from stand to maneuver. At sea the allies gather at Salamis, a maze of channels. Themistocles turns rumor into a weapon, luring the Persian fleet into waters that pinch like Thermopylae made liquid. When oars bite and hulls crowd, the geometry repeats its verdict. Numbers jam, signals tangle, and skill wins where mass cannot unfurl. Triremes splinter, decks flood, ships he summoned from half the horizon go under. Supply and prestige fracture, inevitability thins. Winter and distance then do their work. Xerxes withdraws with part of his host. Mardonius stays to finish the conquest on land. The answer waits the next year near Plataea, where hoplites from across Greece steady, wheel, and break the Persian line. Myths of invincibility die. The empire is still vast. It cannot hold everything when the ground refuses to help. What, then, did Thermopylae buy? Hours, yes. Enough for Salamis to be set, for councils to harden, for farms to be emptied, and something less measurable, a credible story. Greece could tell itself that order beats size in the right place, that sacrifice was investment, not waste. That story survives taxes, faction, boredom. It stitches a season of hard decisions into one picture. Shields nested like scales in a hot, narrow throat of the world. Keep that picture, minus the easy lies. Not 300 against a million, but a coalition with a plan. Not Superman, but citizens and neighbors doing trained work on chosen ground. Not speeches that foretold victory, but choices hammered together day by day. The glory is smaller and nearer. Men joke to breathe through fear. When death comes, it is many and practical, and the cost buys time. A stone at Thermopylae says the rest. Stranger, go tell the Lacedaemonians that we lie here, obedient to their laws. Obedience is the core. So is attention to ground, to timing, to the limits of axles and lungs. Narrow places still exist. River crossings, bottlenecks, clauses, quorums. Courage matters, but only when paired with a map and a plan. Thermopylae endures not because it crowns Sparta or humiliates Persia, but because it translates. It shows that even the largest designs must pass through small realities, and that crossing them takes discipline rather than thunder. That is the echo that reaches us. In heat and dust, in the hinge of a shield line, a coalition turned a corridor into a sovereign act. The road opened, Greece held. The legend kept walking, lighter, cleaner, closer to the ground.